Wilhelmine Amalia of Brunswick-Lüneburg was Holy Roman Empress, Queen of the Germans, Queen of Hungary, Queen of Bohemia, Archduchess consort of Austria, etc., as the spouse of Joseph I, Holy Roman Emperor. Early life. Wilhelmine Amalia was the youngest daughter of John Frederick, Duke of Brunswick-Lüneburg, and Benedicta Henrietta of the Palatinate. Her two surviving sisters were Charlotte Felicitas, who married the Duke of Modena, and Henriette Marie, who never married. Wilhelmina was given a Catholic education by her great-aunt Louise Hollein at the convent of Mabwison, and did not return to Hanover until she was 20 years old, in 1693. Early on, the Holy Roman Empress Eleanor Magdalene of the Palatinate Neuburg decided that Wilhelmina Amalia would be her daughter-in-law. Prince Sam was instrumental in speaking for her candidacy. The advisor of Eleanor, Marco d'Aviano, had convinced her that Wilhelmine Amalia, being pious and older than Joseph, could act as a tempering influence and discontinue his sex life outside of marriage until Leopold. He claimed that he had a vision that the pair would be happy. She was subjected to medical examination to establish if she was fertile, and though she was senior to Joseph, which was initially to her disadvantage, it was decided that her mental maturity would benefit fertilization, marriage. As a result, on the 24th of February 1699, she married Eleanor's son, Archduke Joseph, the heir of Emperor Leopold I. At the wedding, the opera Hercule and Hebe by Reinhard Geiser was performed. Upon Joseph's election as emperor in 1705, she became Empress of the Holy Roman Empire. She had 3 children. Archduchess Maria Josepha married Augustus III, King of Poland and Grand Duke of Lithuania. Archduke Leopold Joseph died in infancy. Archduchess Maria Amalia, she married Charles VII, Holy Roman Emperor. Empress Wilhelmine Amalia was described as beautiful but also as religious and serious. Her relationship with her husband was initially described as happy, but it soon deteriorated. Joseph had a long line of mistresses, both servants and nobles, such as Dorothea Dorn. His hunting companion Count Johann Philipp von Lamberg provided him with lovers, and he eventually had a long-term relationship with Marianne Palffy, who became his official mistress. This was a scandal, as official mistresses had not been accustomed at the Austrian court, and both Wilhelmine Amalia and the Pope protested. Her mother-in-law supported her, scolding Joseph and placed his procurers in prison, but after he became emperor, nothing could be done. He had several illegitimate children, but no surviving male heir with his spouse. In 1704, Joseph contracted syphilis, reportedly from the daughter of a gardener, and passed the disease to his wife. Because of the prudishness of the Austrian court, she initially did not know what had happened to her and blamed herself for the infection. It has been suggested that this condition was the reason for the failure of the Empress to produce more children after the birth of her second daughter. Without male heirs, a crisis developed in regards to the imperial succession. As Empress, Wilhelmine Amalia as well as her successor were described as accomplished in music, discretion, modesty and diligence, and was regarded to fulfill her representational role as Empress well both within the Spanish court protocol of hunting and balls and amateur theatre as well as the religious devotion days of Pietas Austriaca. Joseph did not allow her any political influence whatsoever and kept her outside of state affairs as he did his mother and mistress Marianne Palffy, but she was described as intelligent and self-sufficient, and she established political connections among the ministers, especially her relative Prince Sam, whom she generally supported even when he promoted the the interests of the Holy German Empire against Austria. She is described as an active participator in dynastic intrigue, and assisted in the marriage between her cousin and brother-in-law. She worked closely with the Hanoverian envoy to benefit interests of her family, the Guelphs. Empress Dowager in 1711, Wilhelmine Amalia was widowed, and her mother-in-law became the interim regent until her brother-in-law, the Archduke Charles, could return from Spain, where he was the Austrian nominee for the Spanish throne during the War of the Spanish Succession. At the death of her spouse, the stress caused the syphilis of Wilhelmine Amalia to return in full force after several years' remission. When Charles returned, he was proclaimed as the new Holy Roman Emperor, Charles VI. His inability to produce male heirs irked Charles VI and eventually led to the promulgation of the Pragmatic Sanction of 1713, a document which abolished male-only succession and declared his lands indivisible. The new emperor favored his own daughters over those of Joseph I and Wilhelmine Amalia in the succession, ignoring a decree he had signed during the reign of his father, Leopold I. She, as well as her mother-in-law, was active in fighting for their daughter's right to the throne. By the secret Pactum Mutuae Successionis of 1703, Leopold had made an agreement with his sons that the daughters of Joseph would be first in the line of succession, followed by those of Charles and Leopold, and though none of the empresses knew of the existence of the document, there had been talk of it, and Joseph had hinted about it to Wilhelmine Amalia. Baron Silin apparently showed Wilhelmine Amalia the document before it was presented to the head of her family, the Elector of Hanover. In 1712, the Elector sent the famous Gottfried Leibniz to her to assist her in defending her daughter's rights against Charles, and on the 21st of April 1713, Charles VI presented the Pragmatic Sanction, in which he adjusted himself to the memorandum of Wilhelmine Amalia from the document of Pactum Mutuae Successionis, after which she celebrated with a dinner for the empresses and archduchesses at the table of Empress Dowager Eleanor, where she was congratulated on her success and answered that she hoped the emperor would have a son. In 1715, however, her supporter Silin died, and in 1717, Charles VI changed the terms of the Pragmatic Sanction to favor his daughters over hers. She did not approve, but did not openly protest. In 1722, after her daughters were married, Wilhelmine Amalia retired a convent that she had founded earlier in 1717, the Salesianerinnenkloster auf dem Rennweg in Vienna. The convent did not mean a retreat from social life, as she was in fact very active as a dowager, regularly leaving the convent for family visits as well as representational visits. It was as an Empress Dowager that she had her greatest impact upon cultural life in Vienna. Her medical prescriptions in her care for the sick was recommended, and she founded a boarding school as well as one of Vienna's first orphanages for girls. She admired François de Sales and Jean-Françoise Fremont de Chantal, and helped promote her canonization. She was also a patron of the Catholic reformer Lodovico Antonio Muratori. Wilhelmine Amalia got along very well with her mother-in-law Eleanor and her sister-in-law Elizabeth Christine, as well as with the archduchesses, and the three empresses were described as supportive toward each other. Wilhelmine Amalia nursed Elizabeth Christine when she had smallpox, and Elizabeth Christine nursed Eleanor during her last illness. In 1740, Charles VI died. During the War of the Austrian Succession, Wilhelmine Amalia initially supported her son-in-law, Charles Albert, Elector of Bavaria, in his pursuit of the imperial crown, but soon retired again to private life. In June 1740, 1741, Empress Maria Theresa visited her and asked her to act as a mediator between herself and her son-in-law, the Bavarian Elector, but she refused. Wilhelmine Amalia outlived her spouse by more than 30 years, dying on 10 April 1742. She is buried in the Salesian convent in Vienna. Her heart is buried in the imperial crypt. Ancestry.